Hey everybody, Sam with Green Hills Guitar Studio here. Hope you're doing well. I'm back with another 5-minute lesson. As always, these lessons are based on questions I get from actual people when I'm teaching guitar lessons here in Nashville, Tennessee at Green Hills Guitar Studio. Okay, so this issue came up. It wasn't really so much a question as just something that came up. So I got this guy playing guitar with me. He's pretty good. He's got some things working. He knows some scales and some positions and stuff. But a lot of his lines, when he's soloing or improvising, are kind of whack. They don't exactly land, I guess, is the best word. And this is a common problem I've noticed with players who rely mostly on tablature. Okay, so they kind of learn a shape devoid of any rhythm or thinking about where the notes might align with the beat. If you read music, you have to be very specific, obviously, about which note is on the downbeat and on the upbeat. Now, I'm not saying you have to read music. I think playing by ear is more valuable, honestly. But it's cool to be able to read. What's not valuable is just looking at tablature. Because usually there's no real indication of rhythm, and you're just kind of regurgitating a pattern or like a series of numbers that you see without thinking about how those notes align on the beat, right? If you've ever played the major scale and thought closely about this, you realize there's a problem. If you're playing eighth notes in 4/4 time, which pretty common scenario, we have 7 notes, so we end up with instead of 8 eighth notes, and so we end up with something like this, right? Check this out: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. That's like really not satisfying. We get back to the A note, back to the root on the and of 4. It would feel way better if we got back to the A note on the 1 or the downbeat of the following measure. Check it out. Woo! Yeah, that feels like a complete idea rather than stopping mid-sentence. Right? All I'm doing is adding one extra note. In this case, I'm playing the second or the B note before I resolve back to the 1, back to the A. This is the fundamental concept, and musicians have known this forever, right? So you can just cram an extra note in here, to make the scale line up evenly with the beat. I'm really just repeating a note. I'm repeating the second before I go back to the 1, but you could add an extra note. Commonly, it's the sharp 5, so you end up with this thing. Everything lines up. Cool. Then the jazz dudes, they figured out, like, over a dominant chord, you could add in both 7s. A descending line might sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Okay. So my advice to you would be, think about when you're practicing your scales and your shapes, if they're pentatonic stuff, if you're going to play straight eighth notes, and you can make this very easy, like start on the root and play straight eighth notes and see where you land on beat 1 of the next measure. Here's an example. Here's this old thing, the A minor pentatonic scale. We love it. We just friggin' love it. If you start on the root and you play eighth notes, look what happens. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Okay, not bad, right? We start on the root and we end on the 5th. That sounds like a legitimate phrase. Right? That's cool. What happens if we try that with the major pentatonic scale? What does that do for us? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Cool. Landing on the 5th. Nice. Taking this idea even further, instead of starting on the root, which is kind of whack, we could maybe start on a different note. What about the 3rd, right? So instead of starting here on A, we start in C sharp, play up, see what we get. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Yay! Major 3rd, ending on the 1. That's cool. Okay, what about if we did that with like the minor pentatonic scale? Okay, ending on the flat 7. That also sounds pretty good. Starting on the minor third, playing straight up the scale. That sounds all right. What if we started the minor pentatonic scale on the flat 7? All right, stay with me. So, okay, that's right. It's ending on the 4. It's interesting. All right, so there's lots of variations here. You just need to think about how these notes are aligning on the beat. Now, this is a big subject, right? Because we can get into neighbor tones and chromatic lines and surround tones, all of which add color and also help shift over specific notes so they fall on different parts of the beat, and so that you land on a note that makes sense with the chord. Usually a chord tone. Doesn't have to be, but it's a good idea. So to get started with this, when you're playing your scale, just play 8 eighth notes up the scale. Start on different notes in the scale and see where that just spits you out. You don't have to do any type of additional notes. You don't have to do any type of encircling or neighbor tones or surround tones or any of that stuff yet. If you don't want to, just see where it lands. Just start to be cognizant of where those notes land on the beat and where it spits you out. This is really important. If you do this, you'll automatically start sounding better. Things will sound more intentional. After a while, you don't have to think about it quite so much, okay? So try that. It will help. You'll sound better, okay?